Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Sarah Biani, and my team and I are very excited to share the highlights of our project titled Innovative Low Greenhouse Gas Residential Space Conditioning Technologies. While our portfolio has a heavy focus on heat pumps, we also had a concerted effort to broaden and generalize the learnings to home energy saving products and services to low and moderate income and disadvantaged community households. The underlying research theme was to address how can we improve low and moderate income customers' access, adoption, and acquisition of energy efficient heat pumps that use low global warming potential refrigerants. A key learning from our project is that the main feature that drivers LMI customers' adoption is cost savings. And while technology providers are offering a lot of additional benefits and market for choice, comfort, convenience, and connectivity, cost savings remains to be the primary driver for acquiring and adopting these technologies. So our portfolio has three primary objectives. The first was to develop blueprints for energy innovators on how to design, market, sell, and finance their product or service for LMI and disadvantaged communities. The second was to demonstrate an easy install window heat pump with a low global warming potential refrigerant in these LMI and disadvantaged communities. And the focus was to deploy 100 gradient units in the California Central Valley. And the third objective was to demonstrate different mechanisms of how to improve the heat pump energy efficiency that uses a low global warming potential refrigerant with three different concepts. One was to incorporate thermal energy storage, one is to incorporate a heat pipe assisted heat exchanger, and one was to look at an oil-free membrane compressor. So our portfolio objectives were achieved through 6 parallel projects. EPRI was the prime prime entity leading the team. Our technology provider is Gradient, and our primary community engagement partner is GLYNT.AI, and also we had great support with Redwood Energy. These 6 projects were summarized here on the left. They evolved around the theme initially of this window heat pump. GLYNT led 2 projects that are focused on meaningful energy engagement and credit building with utility payments. And Gradient led 2 projects. One was the deployment of 100 units in the Central Valley, and one was on the heat pump energy efficiency improvement by evaluating an oil-free membrane compressor. And the EPRI team led 2 of the technology development projects, one focused on the thermal energy storage and one focused on the heat pipe assisted heat exchanger. And all our work definitely would not have happened without the engagement and support of several community business organizations that we'll be referring to throughout our presentation, and we've listed here on the bottom right. So I'd like to introduce the 3 communities that we had the opportunity to work with throughout this project. We initially started working with Modesto, and that relation was built through GLYNT's relation with the city of Modesto. GLYNT established the Smarter Cooler Homes program, which led a variety of research, surveying activities, and community engagement effort that you'll be learning about shortly. 2 key highlights to mention that the team uncovered the alignment between the demographics and user voice in Modesto and the rest of the country. And that's where the theme of Modesto Matters emerged. And we also learned that Modesto is already engaged in this energy transition. For the deployment of the Gradient products, the primary challenge we had was to identify eligible sites that had windows that were, sash windows that open vertically up and down. So that the technology fit was what drove the challenge to identify the right community. And thanks to our collaboration with Redwood Energy and their relationship with a variety of affordable housing property managements, we were able to identify an eligible community in Tracy. So Eden Housing manages the Stone Pine Meadows, which is a multifamily affordable housing complex. That's a newer construction in 2000 that was built in 2000. This was a 72 apartment unit complex. They all had standard sash windows, and they were currently using central ducted HVAC system that was upgraded in 2020, but actually resulted in higher utility bills for the residents, and they were pulling back from using them as much so that they wouldn't have to bear the high utility costs, both for cooling and heating. And then thanks to Liz Grassi for connecting us with the community in Fresno, we got to work with the Lowell neighborhood, which is very close to downtown Fresno, a historic neighborhood. The majority of the homes we deployed in were single family construction that were built in the early to mid 20th century. Most of the residents were either using swamp coolers, window ACs, space heaters, and floor radiators. And so with that, I'd like to say that today is really an invitation on all our 6 projects. We're going to give highlights about them shortly, and we could easily spend, a half hour or full hour on each of the 6. So we'll give highlights and then be able to discuss more details during the Q&A. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Martha and Jose to learn about the blueprints for energy innovators. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. This is Martha Amram, CEO of GLYNT.AI, and I'm joined by Jose Borrell, our community manager in Modesto, and Kelly Martin, our program manager. I apologize, I'm having a travel day with delays, so I'm calling from an airport, and if the background sound is too much, we can switch to having Kelly Martin present. But next slide, please. So as part of what we did as part of this grant collaboration, GLYNT was the meaningful community engagement, and our remit was to figure out the consumer purchase journey for low to moderate consumers and show how it could work first for the gradient and then generalize to other products. And we were able to do that during this project, but we took it a step further as well. Because as you can see across the top where it says design, market, and sell, that's the consumer purchase journey. But we also figured out that unless you finance this, there's just no way that the target audience that we wanted to market to could afford the upfront cost. And our surveys show that in Modesto, consumers are willing to put up to about $800 on a credit card to buy energy saving products if there's a real money saving purpose to it. But beyond that, they're going to need some financing. And so that opened the door to our second project, which is credit building with on-time utility bill payments. We summarized our research in a body of writing called the Blueprints for Energy Innovators. This is 7 chapters and 5 appendices that were written for 2 audiences. One, somebody like Vince here on the project, who's like an energy saving entrepreneur and an energy innovator. We know him well, and he was kind of one of the folks who were thinking about as you're writing, what would he need to know to be able to market and sell a product to low to moderate income consumers first. And then the second one would be if you were in a community, Fresno, Tracy, Stockton, and you wanted to invite an energy innovator to come and collaborate in your area, what would you want to know, and what would you need to do to figure out your readiness? So with that in mind, everything we did in Modesto, we had an angle towards how would this scale across California and across the US. And our deep dive into Modesto shows that demographically, it's very much representative of LMI communities around the US, hence our phrase, Modesto matters. I do want to point out that our research showed that the target market for the consumer purchase journey is the 25th to 55th percentile of household income. That's about 38,000 to 75,000. So for a family of four, that's still below the poverty level and does qualify that family for LIHEAP and other programs, but it is not below the 25th percentile. So some of the like low and affordable income housing occupants may not be part of the target market that we think has a modest amount of discretionary income. Next slide, please. So through focus groups, next slide, please, thanks. Through focus groups, surveys, local surveys, national surveys, we were able to establish the consumer purchase journey. That's the starting at the left where the decision makers start getting into awareness and interest into a product, all the way to the right where there's actual experience, post-sale experience, and then you can see how many products are sold. And then there's also a social proof feedback loop, which is those who experience a product post on social media and other places, and that informs the buying decisions of the next cohorts. What you see here is in purple is the standard online consumer journey circa 2023. And what we found is during COVID and the pandemic that the target community quickly migrated to being very digital, and they too are participating in exactly this way with doing a ton of online research and checking with information sites and so on. Across the bottom, it's marked by gray arrows, are the frictions that we found that are unique to the LMI market. And the bottom line is twofold. Next slide. One is the product must save money. That is the key buying reason. Nothing else comes even close. No surprise, the city folks in Modesto told us that from the beginning, but all of our research also validated that. And in order to be money saving net of financing, you have to have pretty good financing and you have to have access to financing. So that was our second key finding. There's just no seat at the energy equity table for all of the target market we studied without financing that is affordable and accessible. Next slide, please. And so this led us to focus on the Reflect credit and develop an offering we call Reflect Credit Card. Let your credit score reflect your on-time utility payments. So if you connect your utility bills at the website for your local utility to an auto pay to your credit card, and the credit card is designated just for this purpose, the credit card will report your on-time payments to credit bureaus, and this will raise your credit score. We did a lot of market research on this. We've been working with a well-established credit card provider that focuses on the LMI market, and we've learned a lot about how to enable this product. We see this product as opening the door to the entire purchase journey. My colleague, Jose Boruel, is going to tell you about a capstone project that he put together with several other Modesto residents who form a consulting firm called Debrief Methods. And Debrief was able to do 100% online digital tests of the credit card offer for Modesto LMI. And that's a combination of energy and credit themes for LMI adults. And I believe this is probably the first time such a sophisticated online digital test has been done. I'm going to turn it over to Jose. Next slide, please.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Martha. So as Martha mentioned, we performed 3 parallel online studies that really focused on understanding the low to moderate income adult, and our findings really validated our previous studies, as Martha was mentioning. So the studies were an online ad study, the second one was a market assessment, and the third one was a user experience study. So in the social media ad study, we presented individuals a series of ads on Facebook and on Instagram, and really gave them the opportunity to self-select what image, what graphic they really resonated with them. And what we found is really ad marketing that really garnered messaging around money, rewards, or cashback really had the highest appeal. The second was really wording around tips and tricks. And then the third following was wording around boosting credit. This really gets us thinking, if we really want to begin engaging low to moderate income households, we really need to begin thinking about how we are going to do so online. Just as a data point, 7 out of 10 people are on Facebook on an everyday basis. So meaningful community engagement is online now. The second study we performed was a market assessment to better understand the digital apps and the ecosystem. And what we found was, not shockingly enough, that there's very little in existence of apps that are about sustainability, apps that are around energy, and the few that exist are dedicated utility apps that very few individuals have the ability to play with and use on an everyday basis. So this begs the question, if we really want to reduce greenhouse gases at the household level, we really need to begin thinking about how we're going to be changing the individual's behavior. The third study that we performed was a user experience research, and we created a high fidelity app that we call Reflect, as Martha mentioned. And we heard directly from the low to moderate income adults. And we did this by breaking down the Reflect app, and we really presented them with the individual features and had them rank their level of interest. And we found that nearly all participants shared high interest in the Reflect app. The core components, as Martha is mentioning, was money saving by reducing utility bills, boosting credit, and rewarding the individual for being sustainable. This is important because the average user doesn't really look at their utility bill, and Reflect will change that. So the next step for GLYNT will be working to establish a credit card partner. The second is in 2023, following this year, a couple months following this year, they will really be glad to share and speak to anybody that would wanting to partner. And then the third is, hey, if you want to read more about the blueprint for energy innovators, we would love to share some of those. And from there, I'll pass it back to Sarah. Or Andrew, sorry.
Thanks, Jose. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Andrew. I'm from Gradient, and I'll be sharing about our project of deploying 100 field units to the Central Valley of California. Next slide, please. So a few of the key objectives with this project were centered around gathering feedback about how the residents use the Gradient and any key differences compared with their existing systems. And we really wanted to understand as much as possible around the question of, will this technology fit these residents and fit these communities? And in addition to that, as GLYNT covered really well, another important factor is cost savings, and making sure that any technology that we want to send out to these communities is kind of confirmed and validated that it will save money. And so an important objective was to assess the impact on residents' utility bills and also any kind of secondary energy saving behavior that we might observe. And the impact on this stands to be significant. If we can validate usability among these LMI communities, that's just one less barrier that exists to deploying these at greater scale and further allowing the adoption of this technology in a community and region that really needs this solution. And as you can see, this map to the right of the state of California shows in red the Central Valley as the most polluted region of the state of California. And so any way that we can help address this stands to be very impactful. And the Gradient technology itself would directly reduce greenhouse gas emissions by electrifying all the home's heating and cooling that is used by the Gradient. And further, the system also uses a low GWP refrigerant. So any deployment of these systems would further mitigate any potential greenhouse gas emissions. So as Sarah mentioned, we deployed to 2 main communities in the Central Valley. One was Fresno, the other was Tracy. Fresno is these 2 photos up above, primarily single family homes. And each home, we had the opportunity to be there in person. All the installation work was done by the grant partners, ourselves, Gradient, EPRI, and Redwood Energy. And we had the opportunity to meet all the residents on the initial install, get to learn about their home a bit, and learn about their energy needs as well. And so for each home, we actually sized and deployed units based on their need. So ranging from 1 to 4 units based on the size of the household. And beyond the first interactions with the homeowners, which were very, very fruitful in terms of learning about their experience of the system, our grant partner, Redwood Energy, did an incredible job of staying engaged with these residents and surveying them throughout the study period. Next slide, please. So what were a few things that we learned? The first was definitely around this usability topic, and it was very, very great to see that a lot of the homeowners were able to integrate these systems really effortlessly into their homes. And we saw this in the first interactions we had with them, and then it showed up later in the surveying as well. One of the survey questions was centered around ease of use, with all the residents giving a score. And the gradient scored very high on that scale, with over 2/3 of respondents giving it the highest possible rating. The system also comes with some advanced features that comes with an app, and this was new to many residents, and few if any had used an app to control and better have flexibility with their systems. But many found this very valuable, and some advanced features such as controlling it from across the room, scheduling, proved to be very valuable. Particularly for residents that had any health or mobility issues, where controlling it without having to go across the room to physically control it was very valuable. And then the other really significant finding that stood out to us was this modular use capability. And so in a lot of homes, we installed anywhere from 2 to 4 systems in different rooms, different sides of the house. And whereas a traditional HVAC system, you have to just run it and you have to heat the whole house all at once. But the gradient allows you to heat each room independently. And so if you're only in the living room or you're only in the bedroom, you have the flexibility to only heat or cool that room as you want. And we knew this could be a great value and great means to save money potentially, but really leapt out the page that respondents, they got back to us and said that nine times the number of surveyed participants used the gradients in this modular way versus using them all at once, which was really significant to us. And this was driven largely by the flexibility and desire to save money, and understanding that the less energy that your whole home uses, the more money you'll save, and you can do that in this modular fashion. And as Sarah also mentioned, there's a dozen other findings we could go on for quite a while, but those are the 2 I'd like to highlight for now, and I'll pass it back to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Andrew. So for the next portion of our presentation, we're going to give very quick highlights about the 3 technology development projects, and we can go into more detail about each of them, but we'll save that for the Q&A. So we'll get started with Vince Romanen on the oil-free membrane compressor by Gradient.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you everyone for joining. So the goal of this research project is to develop a lower cost compressor for heating and cooling technologies. Compressors are one of the main drivers of weight, cost, and maintenance in today's HVAC systems. And so if you can improve on that, you can have a significant benefit to the overall system performance and cost and accessibility. So today's compressor technology involves sliding metal surfaces inside of a rotating compressor, which means precise manufacturing tolerances, careful sealing, and careful control of lubrication, which drive cost. And so we patented a type of compressor that doesn't have any sliding seals and therefore needs less precise manufacturing, less total material, and potentially no lubricants, which is an added benefit that would really open up the design space for new types of refrigerants and new types of cycles as well, helping reduce the carbon footprint of these systems. At the end of this project, we wanted to prove the initial concept of this new category and type of compressor, and we were successfully able to do so. We designed, prototyped, built, and then integrated into a full cycle this new category of compressor. And while this first demonstration was operationally successful, much more research is going to be needed to understand the limits on its performance and to better characterize its reliability. And so we saw a 16% efficiency compared to state-of-the-art of 50 to 60%. This is much lower, but not entirely unexpected for the very first demonstration of a new type of technology. And we identified some areas to investigate to see if these were aspects of the design that can be improved or not, and what the upper limit on efficiency is. And then next, we identified key areas of research that need to be done in order to prove that this new type of compressor can last a very long time in the field, as existing compressors do. And so it was a really exciting first step to demonstrate this new technology, but more research will be needed to continue to bring it to market. Thanks, Sarah. With that, I'll pass it off to Aaron.
All right, thank you, Vince. So this next project deals with thermal energy storage and potentially integrating it with a window-style heat pump. So thermal storage itself is a fairly mature technology. So if you look at that plot on the top right, they've been used in commercial buildings for many years to manage peak demand, and it gives you a lot of flexibility in your equipment's operation. So if you look at the schematic on the bottom right, it shows that dotted box, right? That sort of represents the outdoor portion of the window heat pump. So you already have a secondary loop that's bringing water glycol into the indoor. So that setup makes it very easy to integrate a storage device. And also the capacity from that storage device can then allow you to downsize the primary heat pump. So you use less refrigerant and the overall cost comes down for the customer. So in this project, we modeled the performance of a heat pump with integrated thermal energy storage for different California climate zones, focusing on obviously residential applications, looked at different sizing strategies and the possibility of enhancing the overall performance with more optimal controls or more advanced heat exchangers. And our key finding is that, based on current conditions, utility rates and so forth, thermal energy storage itself, it's not quite cost effective in the residential sector. Another thing we found was, control strategies are usually optimized for overall cost in terms of operating the equipment or enhancing the performance of the heat pump itself. So they're not necessarily always aligned with reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So there's probably some additional work that needs to be done if that's your primary goal, instead of just reducing the payback as much as possible for the customer. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Matt Robinson on his heat pipe heat exchanger project.
Thank you, Aaron. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone. My name is Matt Robinson. I'm going to be describing the heat pipe heat exchanger project in this portfolio of projects. So the goal here was really to develop an alternative approach to the secondary heat transfer loop that is common in low GWP refrigerants, usually to isolate the flammable or toxic refrigerant. So the approach we wanted to take, we wanted to leverage a heat pipe, not a heat pump, but a heat pipe, to try and open up 18 to 30% energy savings over that secondary heat transfer loop that is more common nowadays. So what did we need to do that? We had to go from essentially a paper, like a pen and paper design, to something we could actually evaluate in the lab for a proof of concept. So we started off with a heat pipe model. We then worked that into a heat exchanger model. And then once we started getting reasonable results in terms of performance and size of that performance, we actually did a search for manufacturers who are willing to work with us to try and improve the design, in particular on manufacturability aspects, and then ultimately on fabrication of a prototype for us to evaluate, which is where we ended this portion of the project with an evaluation of the prototype in our thermal laboratory, which is a bit hard to see in that picture in the bottom center, but that's the prototype in its test rig. And the big takeaway from that was that we were, really a promising takeaway, was that we were able to get efficiencies on the order of 90% in heating and cooling mode, with, of course, more work to be done. And we can discuss that in the Q&A section, but I will pass it back to Sarah.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, everyone. So in closing, we want to thank SGC for enabling our groundbreaking research, and we're not stopping here. We're talking about, this journey to provide accessibility and improve adoption and make available these energy saving products for LMI and disadvantaged communities. And we're continuing this effort through all these 4 facets, right? And if we look at the foundational concepts of affordability and adoption, we've learned how much energy equity is really in the financing and payment capabilities. That, the different social classes, everyone wants energy savings, but the difference is in their credit capacity for financing. On the education aspect, we had to, through our deployment, community deployment experience, we had to make sure we did translation of the material so that the residents were able to understand what the technology was about, how to use it. So there's both financial and energy literacy that needs to happen in providing educational resources that way. And on the technology front, while there's a big focus on energy savings, but it's also very critical to understand the non-energy benefits and needs of the customer, so that access and usability to enable the behavior changes for savings in energy and cost can be realized. And so with that, we'd like to thank you all for your time and attention and look forward to the discussion.